Okay, I'm in 89 Highland Lake Road. All right, and I noticed that the floors, when I walked on the first floor, were uneven. They were sloping and sagging. There was movement. So I decided to come down into the basement over here and see what's going on before I start doing the interior. And so I noticed that the stone wall definitely looks like it's moved a little bit. It has been recently parged, right? So it is all mostly old framing, but you can see that they've done temporary supports here. They've done temporary supports on the main beam here. So I'm going to walk around the basement. I'm going to point out quite a few things. So the first thing is I noticed that this is balloon framing, but it looks like they have put blocks to prevent any kind of fire spread. You can see on the subfloor over here that there's a bunch of mildew. We're not allowed to call it mold, but it definitely looks like it could be cleaned. This over here, it looks like there's some paper. So I don't know if there was a leak around over here, but right now it's not leaking. There's a tub. But we'll run all the plumbing and see if that's leaking. Right. I am seeing in a couple of areas there's some powder post beetle damage. So you can see right here. Right. I don't see any insects, but there's definitely some powder post beetle damage. Some more mold, mildew. Blocks are in place. There's quite a bit of corrosion on the pipes, as you can see over here. Something that definitely should be cleaned up. Right, you can see over here how the wall just sort of gently slopes back. Some more powder post beetle damage here. So I already walked around and poked and prodded at these, and I haven't seen any insects. The plate is just like a big 4x4, and it doesn't look like there's any termite damage, even though I can see some damage to the lumber. It looks like it's old, sort of at the lumber yard level. Right? These are the gas lines over here. Right? You have electricity and the light switch are over here. Right. Again, you can see some corrosion, right? It's a little bit of leaking. So this is stuff that would be nice to clean up a little bit. All right, you can see a bunch of spray foam. I'm guessing they did that to exclude, to make sure that there was no mice or anything. You know, this is where the main beam pockets over here. All this is nice and solid up in here. All right, this is where the main waste pipe leaves the home. You can see that the slope of it is a little bit negative. So that could lead to things, solids, paper, things like that that you put in the waste pipe to just sit in that section of the pipe and for it maybe not to drain properly. So that's something that should be corrected. You can see the temporary supports over here. All right, this was an original permanent column, right? And all these are post jacks. And you can see the post jacks have just been put up on pieces of wood. These are really temporary repairs. You can see the checking in the main beam. There's some splitting and cracking. So I mean, realistically speaking, this beam probably should have been replaced, and they decided just to leave it in place. I mentioned about some termite damage. You can see some old termite damage over here. All right, but you know, this is just in the middle of the joist over here. So this is probably, you know, at the lumber yard level. And then if you look at where the main beam pockets on the other side of the house, right, this looks okay. Right, there's a little bit of carpenter ant frass over here, but I don't see any insects around in any of the spider web traps or anything. This is the secondary main beam, right? It runs down the length of the house. And you can see that this really isn't pocketed on anything anymore over here, right? It's all just sitting on this one little stone here. That's no good. That's definitely that something should be corrected. Inside here, you got a crawl space, right? And you can see this was all a new build, right? And they did footings and new beams, right? Looks like right in front of us over there on the left-hand side, you can see a little bit of water staining. So, I mean, we'll run everything and check to see what's going on, if anything's leaking. You know, again, this is all powder post beetle damage over here. But no insects. Okay. You know, again, you can see some of the mildew on the surfaces. You know, this is something that maybe you may want to have someone come and clean. There's definitely a musty odor down over here. Some more carpenter ant frass that's stuck in spider webs. You can see it all along the ridges over there. A little bit of checking on the sill plate. Like I said, it's a 4x4. It seems pretty solid. Right, there's some notching in the joists. You know, nothing outrageous. This looks like this was a window at one time that was blocked off. That's fine. Water heater was replaced. So you can see the water heater is dated from 2018. Right, it's a 40-gallon tank, runs on propane. You can see the corrosion that we're talking about on the supply lines over here. You're missing a discharge tube over here that's supposed to come down. All right, you've got the water conditioning equipment over here. You can see the gauge is all rusted. All right, that should be replaced. You've got a shutoff over here. The knob is rusted right off, so that's something that should be replaced. All right, you can see there's all kinds of crud. So I don't think this has been maintained at all. You're gonna have to call for service on this. You can see the connections over here. All right, you see everything is leaking. It's got corrosion on it. So this is definitely something that you should take care of. Right, and you can see the pressure tank leads you to a well head right there. So it looks like the well goes down right over there. Right, as I get closer, you can see it looks like there's a little bit of a leak around there. Okay. You know, there's a little bit of water staining right around the posts, which indicates there may be some water coming in around here during heavy rains. They've got a sump pump over here. I did test the sump pump. It is working. It's got a check valve, you know, to prevent any water from backing up once it gets into this pipe, which is good. There definitely should be a cover on top of here, because you have a dehumidifier, and that dehumidifier is going to recycle the water in the pit back into the dehumidifier and then back into the pit, and it'll be a never-ending cycle. You can hear it's running now. You know, here you could see the original post. You can see there's been some movement in the original framing, the way they had notched it originally. So yeah, I mean, like I said, this beam really should have been replaced, both of them. It's not too late, you know, but it's going to cost money, so it's considered a defect. And then you have an old central furnace over here, right? You can see some mildew that's growing on the surfaces. Looks like it had leaked at a certain time. All right, you can see by the serial number, it looks like it's from 98, right? And so these are traditionally designed to last about 20 years, and this one's about 22 years old. So this is something that may need replacement. I don't like to see all the rust on the cabinet. I can't even get this door open. I tried to pry the bottom of it, and you can see the metal's just flaking off. Ideally, this furnace really should have been up off the ground. Yeah, that's something you're gonna have to do with the next one. And you can see over here, right, this is the coil for the AC, and it's compatible with R22 or 410A, so that's positive at least, because they're moving away from R22 and most of the components now are 410A, so at least you won't have to change the evaporator coil if you have to replace the furnace. And you can see the furnace runs on gas, right, propane, and that runs back to the gas line. And then last but not least, you have the electrical panel over here. You can see we removed the dead front cover. Right, there were only 3 screws in this dead front cover. The screws are pointy headed, see that? Those aren't the correct screws. So you're definitely going to want to replace the screws over here. It's a 200 amp service. It's an overhead service. It comes in from over here. Comes in, that's the main disconnect right over here. All the wiring looks good. Everything looks properly sized. There is one instance of double tapping over here, but that's just for the doorbell. That's a pretty common occurrence. They just tap in to get power. There is room for expansion on the bottom. You have room for 4 more breakers. So if you wanted to separate it off, you can. But it's not the end of the world because you're only going to be pulling low voltage when you ring the doorbell. And then over here you can see there's an opening in the panel. You definitely want to close that up so you don't get any kind of mice. You know, they knocked out the cover. They planned on putting something there and they never did. So that's not going to stay there, but if you want to put a piece of tape or something on the outside, that'll work fine. Otherwise, they sell plastic knockout covers. All right, you can see a little bit of corrosion over here, just again indicating some water coming in around over in this area. So yeah, I mean, it's an old structure for sure, but you know, there's nothing that indicates it's going to fall down, but definitely better repair should have been made for the main beams, and to fix the floors to make sure they're straight. Okay, bye.